Hello, my name is Christopher Brooks, and I'm the founder of the Customer Experience World Games. I'm delighted that you've decided to take part in this very special edition. And I'm going to provide you just some context about the games as a bit of an introduction, and also just some appreciation of what customer experience means in the charity and NGO world. So, whilst principally there is no difference, we're looking to create better outcomes through improved experiences for customers, whoever they may be, because we're dealing with charities and because the aspects and inputs and mechanics of how they work are slightly different, we just need to have an appreciation of that. So this isn't by any means kind of a masterclass in charity management, but it's just an appreciation of what we've learned dealing with charities through the World Games over the last few years. So I'll bring up some slides. And the way we bucket it, we put it under this kind of term of CX for good. We're using customer experience to create a positive social impact. Principally, what we're doing, taking the technique of customer experience and using that to help make outcomes better for those who are engaged with charities, be that volunteers, be that donors, or be that the beneficiaries themselves. So how do we sort of frame that? Well, we believe customer experience, this is a fundamental, customer experience has the potential not just to improve things for businesses, but also to make improvements to society. And there are many examples of this in charities, NGOs, governments, local councils, where an application of customer experience, making the experience better for to the benefit of those who are using services and products, actually does improve society overall. And therefore, we need to think beyond business. And if we think beyond business, the kind of the transactional value of doing customer experience, then we can achieve even more. And the more people who work in businesses applying customer experience, who can step out of that world and help NGOs and charities in areas that they don't have the capability themselves, they're developing it, but they don't have the capability, then how wonderful would that be? And we want to make that a better place through collaboration and using the time we have and the talents we have to help good causes. And we have been very fortunate and privileged to work with 30 different charities across the world who all have very different needs, different contexts, different demands on their time and their resources. But in each and every case, we've been able to demonstrate that customer experience could actually make a difference in their world, one that they really valued. And being a part of these games, you will get the experience and the opportunity to do that. I just wanted to introduce you to this notion of CX for Good. So CX for Good is sort of the umbrella brand that sits around the Customer Experience World Games. When I say a brand, it's probably too grander title for it, but it's a movement. And what we try to do every once in a while is get together with professionals to just explore and share how customer experience can make a positive impact to society. And this is a summit we held in 2022, I think it was, and we had individuals there from the fire brigade talking about crisis management, crisis experience, how that works. We had an individual from a charity demonstrating how experience in the charity had helped so many more people because of a care of the experience they were providing. And then other examples, such as from in the UK, the National Health Service, which is a public sector health service, how taking the principles of business from banking and customer experience management in banking into that world had actually improved things significantly for both those who are donating blood and the beneficiaries of that blood. So it really is a living and breathing thing, customer experience in making a positive impact to society. So whilst we'll talk about them in the context of a games, it's a serious thing, and therefore, the more that we can lend what we know and we understand and we practice in business into this space, then the more impact we can make in society. Now, with the games, we have kind of a set of principles, and these are true for kind of CX for good. And that is that we need to understand there's a much broader customer ecosystem going on than perhaps the bit we're involved in when it comes to business. And actually, standing on the other side and seeing the world the customers in and the very small piece of interaction they have with us helps us to understand just how we can help them in other ways. It's very much what we're doing as part of the games is supporting charitable organizations. So whilst we're delighted to be involved with you as an organization, as a corporation contributing towards this, we're here because you're helping the charity. And that's really important to us, is that we actually make a positive impact to the charity. At the same time, we're hoping to raise standards. One of the things that is quite unique about the games is the fact that when we've collected any evidence of how things work in charities, and if the charities get to see the ideas and say, this is really helpful, then it becomes a standard we set, and we can use another one of the principles, share that in the spirit of progress. Anything that you provide as an answer, as a solution, will be captured and will be made available to other charities. So everyone can learn, and we can raise those standards together. And in the same respect, what it does is it helps develop a CX community. There are many communities. Communities are a very popular word at the moment. But what we like to have is one with meaning, one that actually can really help charities because of the fact that we're pulled together by this common good. That's what pulls us together, not a commercial imperative, but the desire as humans, as individuals, to make a positive impact in others' lives. And that's what now you have become part of 1,000 people community, where we will come back and we will try and help charities whenever we can to make improvements so they can help society. Now, where did this all start? Well, back in 2020, when we were in the start of lockdown, I'd been to see this individual, Jamie McDonald, speak. I run a scouting pack, and we'd been to see him speak and share his stories. And I was inspired by it. And I was inspired by the fact that what he does is he raises money to give to people to help raise money. That's what he does. So if there may be parents who have a child who's unwell and they need to raise funds for that child, then rather than him going out, Jamie, and raising money for them, he'll teach the parents how they can raise money themselves. And understandably, the parents are typically not aware of the fact that they have the capability to actually raise the money themselves. And he improves not only the financial contribution towards their cause, but their self-esteem and their support for their child. It's really important, that emotional connection he gave. I found him inspiring. And then I spoke to him, and he said, wow, he said, I won in the UK the Pride of Britain Award, which is an award that's given to the most wonderful charity fundraiser. And he said, this lockdown has stumped me. I can't help people. I don't know what to do. And that was my quest. How do we help Jamie help people again? And we created the games. So through the games, Jamie gave us a challenge for a child who was unwell. And we created, through lockdown, an experience to help raise funds again for him. So he was the first person we interacted with. He took a complete leap of faith to help us. And that spirit of where he comes from. And you can find him. He's got a great book if you want to buy it. It's a really, really good book about, and you may have come across him because he's done marathons across Canada and things like this before. So you may have come across him. He's run the world. So I'm sure he's been to Bogota, he's been to South Africa. He's been all over. You may well have seen him. But he's a very inspirational individual. And his whole being is selfless. And it's about, how do I improve the lives of other people? And I love this concept. And I thought, why don't we bring this to customer experience? So that's what we did. And during lockdown, what did we do? Well, we played games. In times of crisis, we played games. We set up the World Games, and we got people from the community to come together, play, organized in teams randomly. So you get to play with people you don't normally play with. You don't get to work with, perhaps in different geographical areas, perhaps in different disciplines. And you get given a challenge you've never seen before, which will be for a charity, but it's a real challenge. And during the lockdown, we played these games and we helped charities wherever we could. So that was the concept of it, and it's kind of grown from there. There are I say just under 30 charities that we've helped, but it's just a small selection of them, the different sorts of things that we've kind of been up to. Jamie's charity is called the Superhero Foundation. Another example there was Joico, which are a charity based in Bangladesh, and they help educate farmers. Local farmers to improve the efficiency of how they work. And I remember the experience for them actually led to a Swiss authority giving them some more funds. So they were really pleased. And Resonate is a wonderful charity which helps women who are working in business but want to become entrepreneurs in their own right. And they teach them how entrepreneurial skills and coach them and help them actually become entrepreneurs in their own right, which is wonderful. And others such as and the different sorts of challenges we get. If you take someone like the RSPCA, which is the Royal Society of Protection of Cruelty of Animals, which is in a number of different countries, they wanted to produce strategic documents to show their leadership team the value of customer experience or charity experience, so they could get some investment to actually make the difference. Sometimes strategic, sometimes it's more kind of tactical, but every single time a team of players come along and help. And that's led to sort of 9 world games that we've had now in some in local areas, such as we run a game specifically in Poland where the games are played in Polish because there will be individuals who would rather play in a local language. We have, I think, in excess of 950 players now. 29 charities helped, and obviously with the work that you're doing, it's going to push that number even higher. And we have players coming from 40 different countries. So it's really diverse. We intentionally have set this up when we play the World Games, that regardless of which country you come from or what your capability, your sector, you'll be put together randomly in teams, because it then becomes a really good opportunity to learn and develop from others. So when we talk about the games and when you're going to be playing in the games, how do you do it? What can you do? How can you approach it? Well, this is how we put it. We say show up. Make sure you're there. Make sure that you're part of it. You recognize you're privileged. You're stepping into a very emotional situation, a charitable situation. The charity that you're going to be supporting has taken that leap, like Jamie did with us in the first place, to ask you to help them. That's a big thing. That's going to take their precious time up, and they're going to be depending on hearing something and finding something of real value. So show up, contribute. Everyone's voice is important. We don't want to work on the basis that 80% of the noise comes from 20% of the participants. 100% of the voices should be heard, because my experience playing the games and being involved in the games is sometimes the quiet voices in the back, they'll drop just the most amazing little gem. And you go, that's the idea we should build on. So please use this forum. Remember, as you do it and as you take part, it's brand new to everyone. So it's a level playing field. There's going to be nobody in the team who does this for their living. It's not what you guys do. It's not how you operate. So therefore, it's brand new to everyone. Hold hands together and go forward. Only share the time you have. So be very conscious about not creating a detriment to yourself in terms of stealing time perhaps from family or from the activities you're doing at work to do this, unless it's kind of authorized time. And sometimes we do find, I've spoken to many, many players who have said, I couldn't help myself. I just worked all weekend because I wanted to make such a difference. When they say work, they're volunteering. That's what they're doing. They're volunteering their time. So we're never going to restrict how long you spend on it, but be conscious that, the smallest amount of time makes a difference. We put this kind of no prospecting in there, which obviously is much more applicable when it's a very diverse group of sometimes vendors and sometimes clients and things in there. But let's say no peacocking in this space. We don't want to look for that. We want to look for everyone being respectful and recognizing that we have to work together to achieve something here. This is one of those initiatives where it's incredible what can be achieved if no one cares who takes the credit. It really is important. It's what you put in rather than what you kind of take out of it. Keep active listening. Hear everything. You're going to come across things in here you've never heard before. And believe it or not, I've had people write to me after the games and say, do you know what? there was something I learned in the games which I've now been able to take back to my business. So therefore, make sure that you do listen to everything, and all ideas contribute to the final one. It's like building a great big tower. Every small thought everyone has is going to add a brick into the wall and help build that tower. You're going to make a difference by actually watching this video, thinking about customer experience as a social impact opportunity. By taking part, making a contribution towards those charities, you are making a difference with your time. That's hugely valuable and it's really rewarding. And you're also achieving progress. When we've completed this challenge, the charity will have a solution either fully developed or in part that will allow them to move forward. That moving forward, we have no idea how significant that will be. It could, for instance, free up somebody's time and they can go and work on something which is 10 times the impact of what we can create. We are making progress for them. So be conscious of that every time you contribute, you're making progress. And how how can you benefit as players beyond the kind of the charitable social impact you'll make? Well, you're bringing to get together the diverse world of CX talent in your organization. So there will be individuals who focus more on CX, less on CX, but you're bringing them all together. Networking practitioners from different disciplines. This is disciples there, I just noticed. Different disciplines. So it could be, those who are actually working in IT, those who work in training, those who are answering the phones, those in management, different areas, bringing them together and leveling things out. You're applying CX skills to new challenges, brand new challenges that you're learning. You're learning new skills. People will share as they go through. Why don't we do it this way? Or there's something I've learned. And we always have that. People say, one of the players has said it's the best learning program they've ever been to in terms of customer experience, because every time they take part, someone shares a new idea or a new tool or a new approach I haven't come across. So you get these, not only the tools, but new ways of working. We will not structure how you organize your teams and how you develop and design your solutions. We'll give you a very rough framework, which you can choose to use or not use. We're including empathy maps and journey maps. You don't have to. You have to get to the outcome, which is delivering a solution for the charity. So you'll find different individuals with different ways of working. We have had a team, and they play every year in the games, and I still don't know how they do it. They've never spoken. They do everything through WhatsApp messaging. Everything. I don't know how they achieve it, but they get brilliant solutions in. So it's not for us to decide how you do it. It's really down to you to organize yourself to do that. And you will achieve more than you thought possible. The number of people who have come to me after the games and said, it was because of the games this happened to me, is just so rewarding. We never set out to achieve that, and we could never predict what those things are going to be. But it just lands us into different spaces. I myself, for instance, I'm going off to Lithuania, to a university who have now taken the games and built it in as part of a student's master's degree course. Now, for me, this is incredible because it means that students, when they come into the world of business, the first opportunity they'll get to have seen customer experience is as a cause for social impact. Isn't that wonderful? So, for me, that came about from a couple of connections in the games who came to me and said, would you be interested in doing this? I'm like, absolutely, yes. Where that could go to next, who knows? But that's the thing with the games. It always provides you new opportunities. So I will make sure that we rework that slide because I did see there's several typos on there. Now, that is one thing you have to forgive with the World Games. We are volunteers. We all work in businesses, but those of us who support and run the World Games, it is volunteer time. So whilst we try to make things look very professional and create the best experience, sometimes things get through, and that's okay with the World Games. We all kind of tolerate that. Now, you have to have a customer-centric mindset, okay? And the customer-centric mindset is very, very simple. What you need to think about, if it works, is what you put in. End of. That's the only area that's really important here to focus on. If you go into this thinking about what you can get out of it, you'll have failed before you start because parts of the brain that we need to be unlocked will be locked away because you're trying to trade off your time for what you're going to get out of it. You've got to think unconditionally, what can I put in? And that is the end of the equation. Because by doing that, you'll give so much more. Your ideas will be so pure. You'll come up with new, fresh thoughts that you wouldn't have thought of before. And at some point in the future, what do I get out of it will naturally pay off. So you don't have to worry. Just focus on what you put in. Okay. Now let's just look at that kind of new customer ecosystem that I mentioned earlier, because this is really, really important. Because what it helps us understand is that when we're creating improvements, there's a really wide set of individuals and entities that are impacted by that. We typically think about making an improvement that will help our customers. Our customers' experience will be better. But actually, if we make the experience better for customers, then hopefully they will be more committed to us than against the competition. What does that mean? That means the competition raise their game. Now, if they raise their game, the whole sector is raising its game. So therefore, no one gets a bad experience. Everyone gets a better experience. And then it's our responsibility to raise the experience once more. In that respect, we can then start to see very obvious experiences which are transferable to things like government and charity, where they can actually benefit from these experiences as well. We've got to remember there are partners that help us to deliver the experience. We can't just do it on our own. So we need to involve them in the development of solutions. We need to also recognize that, as employees, we make a contribution. It is impossible, in my humble opinion, to be an organization that delivers great customer experience if the experience as employees is poor. It just doesn't happen. And Disney have this thing when they talk about, kind of you're on stage or you're backstage, and actually you shouldn't be any different. They have a very simple premise, which is make them smile. And that's what you should do for your colleagues, and that's what you do for your customers. So recognizing these are interchangeable. We have to provide a great employee experience in order to provide a great customer experience. And also ultimately, if we do this well, then those who kind of control the organization will benefit as well. And what will they want to do? They will say, that's good stuff. That's actually helping us. Let's do more of it. And it becomes a lovely cyclical piece. Now, there are things like regulators as well to make sure that we actually adhere to certain standards. And that's really healthy. And the communities that develop up to kind of support different areas. So it's quite a wide ecosystem. When we say this will improve things for customers, we need to kind of stop, look around this table and say, okay, if it's only improving things for customers, not for employees, we're not going to raise the standards, doesn't do anything for the community, employees are negatively affected, is that really a good outcome? Probably not. So we need to make sure that all of these stakeholders can say, yeah, this is great. We all gain from this. It should be a win-win-win-win-win. Customer experience it is possible to do that. And by playing the games, it gives you a real sharp appreciation of that. Now let's just have a look at a couple of kind of very standard models when it comes to kind of charities, just to make us aware of this. So a lot of the time, the important thing is about engaging the donors and volunteers more. Quite often that's what a charity wants to do. Is how do I turn my volunteers into donors? How do I get my donors to contribute more from being single transactions to multiple transactions? And our responsibility and your responsibility playing the games is to come up with experiences to do that. So, there are certain areas you can focus in on. So connections, figuring out how you can connect to more people, join up more pieces, nurturing relationships. It's no different in respect of a business to charity. If with charities you make a donation, if it's treated like a transaction, they don't talk to you, they don't engage with you, don't share anything with you, don't get you involved until the next transaction, then the chances is you'll have no emotional connection to that. And with a charity, obviously, you have an emotional connection. So how do you close the gaps between those sorts of things? With a charity, it's really two-way conversation, much more than with an organization. People are invested emotionally as well as financially to help the charity. So the charity mentality and mindset is to open its doors and say, how can you help us? How can we get you more involved? Because people are much more inclined to do that. It's not something necessarily we have in the world of business. We wouldn't necessarily open our doors and say, come and help us run our businesses to our customers. But in a charity sector, where you're looking to actually benefit from people's emotional commitment, it is something really, really important. Collection, we all work in the sector where collection happens, and we all experience good and bad collection in terms of payments typically, but also kind of a collection in terms of goods and services. It's no different in charities. In fact, it's harder in charities because the expectation is that charities will deliver it to the same standard that the world's best organizations do. So it's quite often an area where there is a lot of improvement that can actually be made. And then the most important piece, and I interestingly had a conversation with a couple not too long ago who were really upset because one of their relatives had passed away and left a lot of money to a charity in Australia. And another friend of theirs had also made a small donation to this charity in Australia, and they both got the same email. And whilst there was an intention to thank, there was a real lack of empathy and appreciation that one of these individuals had given up her life savings to make a donation, and the other had just made a donation because she passed somebody on the street who asked for it. So whilst they're really, really valuable, both valuable, the investment that's gone into one of those, or the considerations gone into one over the other, is very different. So these are all really interesting areas and things you just need to think slightly differently about. Now, when it comes to doning in terms of charities, then there are certain things that can kind of be done. There are different types of donors. You have those who are attendees at events. They go to events. They volunteer their time, and they perhaps show interest. Maybe on social media they like charities or they share information about them, and they're engaged in some ways to kind of demonstrate that they believe in that particular mission. You then have another group who are donating occasionally or infrequently. It may be that they maybe television fundraisers that they see and say, yes, I'll give to this cause, but it's not constantly there as a regular reminder. The next level is sort of mid-level, which is larger donators, or such as the legacy donator I mentioned, or reoccurring donors who are giving on a regular basis, making a commitment on perhaps a standing order or a financial instrument that allows them to give on a real regular basis. And then at the top end are those who set out to actually support their charity. They make it their mission to support the charity, and everything and anything they do goes towards that charity. And that's where you get larger legacy donors as well. But it's a planned activity. It's not sporadic. It's not something that happens secondary in their lives. It's really their focus. And quite often that can be organizations such as yours, who have decided to make a contribution towards a charity, either financially or through thought leadership and idea development, through physically giving time up to go and help the charity, or a combination of all of them. So when you start to think about who it is we're trying to help, this is the customer, the equivalent of the customer. These are the things that you need to be considering. Okay. So again, it's just context and background, but hopefully just sparks a slightly different way of thinking. And then one of the pieces I've found, which I thought was quite interesting, is the idea of, well, what does a good experience look like? We don't need to start from scratch here. We can go and find evidence out there, and I'd highly recommend it when you start this to provide yourself some context and even do it as pre-work. What does good look like? So the sort of things, and if you think about it, you could probably write these down from your own experience. Keep it simple. Make it really, really easy to give money. The last thing you want to happen is for someone to have a hurdle that goes, oh, forget about this. I was just about to commit. Because actually what it does is it builds up a resentment and a barrier towards that charity going forward. You want to ensure trust. You want to know that when you drop your contribution in there to make a difference, that it's going to go to where you want it to go to, and it's going to be used efficiently, effectively, and ethically. And if you haven't been able to convey that in the experience, the approach of the experience, how's it going to feel? If you think about, if you just simply had on the street a tin and someone said, drop your money in there, or go to the charity, you can trust me. Are you likely to do it? Probably not. But if you can create an infrastructure, maybe the charity worker is there, you can see them dressed in the uniform. They've got posters showing what happens to the donation. You start to feel more confident, and it's really important when you're thinking whatever the aspect of the support we're providing or the challenge, that these things keep it simple. Am I demonstrating trust? Keep them engaged. The number of challenges we've had over the years where the charity has said, and we've lost the engagement of the donor or the volunteer because they're just relying on their goodwill and their nature to come back and help as and when needed. But think about engagement as a partnership between the two entities. How do we keep that partnership strong? Having a connection, a deeper sense of fulfillment, recognizing that there is a really important kind of internal reward we get when we support a charity. And it's not something that any of us want to wear as a rosette or a badge when we go out and kind of say, we've helped charities. We just get on and do it quietly. But they've personally made a connection to the purpose and the mission of the charity, and we need to recognize that, and therefore things like providing updates on what's happening to the charity, the areas it's looking at, are really good ways of kind of keeping that connection going. Which comes on to the last one. If you can see the impact that your contribution is happening, you feel validated that actually it was the right choice to actually make. Now, obviously, I mean, you've got to be careful about how you do this. If you're trying to find a cure for what's known as a currently incurable disease, you don't want to have all of that empowerment linked to finding the solution, finding the cure, because it probably won't happen in our lifetime. So you need to be much more effective around what empowerment looks like in terms of that satisfaction that's delivered. So these are really key areas when we're looking at a charitable experience to remember these as almost kind of like, if it doesn't have these five in it, it's not going to connect as well as we need it to. So that just gives you hopefully some appreciation. What I would say is there are some resources out there. One of the players in the games, a guy called Gregorio Uglioni, he runs a podcast called the CX Goalkeeper Podcast, and he's interviewed people like Neil Greenwood, who I mentioned earlier, worked in banking, brought the principles of banking into healthcare. So have a look at that. Or I have my own podcast series, and I've interviewed people like Ashley Jones, who runs a charity called Momentum, which is helping families who are going through a terminal illness with a member of the family through grief counseling and other magnificent ways of providing support through photography and things. And she's really excellent at understanding how to make charity experience work. So there are some people out there that it's really worth just listening to and getting some ideas and fresh thoughts from. Okay. We're 35 minutes in, so I'm going to pause here. This was specifically on charities, and then I'm going to continue, and you can continue if you wish, or you can end it here. Just going through a little bit of kind of customer experience and continuous improvement thinking. So feel free to pause me, go and get a coffee and return. We've got about another 15 minutes to go. Or if you're happy with what you've heard and you want to go off and just learn more about charity experience, feel free to go off and do it. Okay, if you're still with me, we'll go forward then. So what I wanted to talk about now was a bit more technically around customer experience. So there will always be room for improvement. So when you're building these solutions, what I highly recommend you do is think small. I know that seems contradictory, but think small. At the end of this, a charity with scarce resources, both in terms of the human resource and the financial resource, will be looking to deliver a solution to this. The smaller it is, the more likely it is to be delivered. And they can then build on top of that and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So really always remember, whatever you do, there's going to be something better you can do. But that's okay. Improvement, as they say, is kind of in our DNA as a CX practitioner. But if the objective is to get from A to B, you don't need to build the sports car. A skateboard will get us there. It may not be the most efficient, and it may not be the most effective or the most glamorous, but it will do the job. And if you can build a skateboard for something that solves this problem, the charity can then turn it into a bike or a car if they need to. So don't feel you have to do the car. Start really simple, okay? Be very, very clear about that. Um, and it's also important to not reach back and bring your conventional thinking to the games, okay? By all means, bring techniques and ideas that you think will help. But if you go through, right, this is how I solve a problem, and you approach it to the games, you're probably not going to find a new opportunity. And I use this kind of as an example of what I mean there. You know, if someone's climbing the mountain and they're wanting to try and figure out how far they can climb up to the mountain, when they're there climbing that mountain, what they can't see is this bigger mountain. What they can see is a peak, and they believe they're actually kind of getting to the peak. But if in the games we think about we need to help them achieve this in a better way, what we may well do is introduce a hot air balloon. Now, maybe that was in some of your heads, maybe it wasn't. But actually, by introducing a hot air balloon, very quickly, they can then start to see that that peak wasn't the peak, there was another peak there. So this is what I mean by just thinking slightly differently, approaching things in a different way, because it is different to the day-to-day business that we do, and the charity does need to be able to deliver it at the end. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. There we go. You know, there are alternative ways we could actually approach it, but you can see our approach would be to kind of pop you in the hot air balloon and look at it that way. Now, just to remind you kind of those 5 principles of CX for good. Consider all when creating better customer experience outcomes. Really think about everyone around that ecosystem, but also think about your colleagues and the experience they're having as part of the games. If there is someone who is not saying anything, they may feel marginalized. They may feel they haven't got the confidence to say anything. Step forward and remind everyone, none of us have the answers here. We're all making this up as we go along. We're relying upon the confidence of each other, the inspiration and the ideas of each other to move us forward. So every voice should be heard. And if everyone in the team at the end of it says, I really enjoyed that, it doesn't matter what your solution looks like. That really for me is the primary thing. I really enjoyed that. It challenged me. I felt like I'm spending good time with my organization. I respect my organization more for this. Make sure that's your first goal. Share time and CX talent to help others. So whatever ideas you've got, don't be precious about them. Share everything in the spirit of progress. Embrace an open mindset to evolve your thinking, your methods, and your models. Don't be closed. You know, if someone says, I've got an idea, it doesn't come from this world. It's from something completely different. Yeah, let's hear it. Let's see what that's like, because it may well just give us what we need to get to the next step. If you think about the idea that everyone is taking part in the games, everyone is holding hands with each other all the time. So if somebody moves forward, everyone else can move forward. Okay, that's how it works. And be a part of a progressive community driven by purpose. That's what we're doing here. As part of the games, we're focused on the purpose, the intention of the charity, the challenge they've actually got. The profitability is not in our equation here. And that's a really important distinction. That's how this is not commercial at all. We're only focused on the purpose. If that purpose is achieved, then any commercial returns the charity needs, which remember they reinvest it to do more good work, is going to naturally happen. Our job is to focus on the purpose. And just to underline that point, share everything in the spirit of progress. Okay, so if you're making some notes and you look at them and think, I can't make sense of this, can I just share this with people? If you've got an idea, can I just tell you a story from my experience of dealing with a charity? I've been a volunteer in a charity. Can I just share that with everyone? Then bring it out. Or it may be a case of you've heard something, you don't quite remember what it was exactly, but it was a technique somebody used and you thought that was quite good. Bring it all to the table, because it's only by throwing all of these in the middle and we start sifting through them, we'll start to build the right sort of solution that we're looking for. Now, you're a part of something really quite important here in 2025, and we're very, very grateful for your contribution. And just to show you are a part of something bigger, we now have several customer experience world games happening in different countries, in different organizations, with different groups of people. And what you're all doing is you're making a difference. You're making a contribution and demonstrating the customer experience can really create a positive social impact. So on that note, I thank you for what you're going to do because it's going to make a difference. I can guarantee that. I hope it leaves a lasting impression on you, and I hope it affects in a really positive way the way that you think about customer experience in the future. Traditionally, I say at this point but it may or may not start it, but let the games begin. And I really am grateful once again for all your time and your talent that you're putting towards this.